Hello and welcome to the BNB Show. My name is Brandon Kane, and this guy right over here to my left, that would be Brendan Nelson. Seahawks Brendan Nelson, if it were. How you doing, Brendan? I got you in the house here after 4-game losing streak. You holding up okay?
I'm doing pretty good. And I mean, we're kind of at the point now where you can kind of emotionally detach yourself a little bit. We're not all the way there yet, but we're getting there. And all things considered, I'm doing pretty well.
I think that's the best way to put it, is all things considered, because it's certainly been a bit of a rough road this year, and watching our Seahawks play and how it goes down. It was a loss this past week, falling to the Niners 28-16, in a game that was frankly kind of right close to both your and I prediction. I think it kind of halved it right between the middle of what you and I thought this was going to be as far as the points go and outcome on it. As I always like to do with this, though, give me your lead-off thoughts with this coming out of this game, as far as just a general mind state on the team and how this loss came about.
Well, I would say that once we got word that Geno Smith was not going to be able to play and Drew Lock was starting, at a certain point you just kind of have to go, well, what do you really expect? I mean, most teams are not going to win games with their backup quarterback, and it's not like we played awful. I don't think the results out there were anything radically terrible, and I think we do have to have the right expectations in a game when you're playing your backup quarterback against the number one defense, probably as of right now the number one team period in the league on the road. It's not something that you're really going to get all that angry about, I don't think. So I don't think there was any frustration on my part with the way that game went. I'm mostly just I kind of feel like people don't understand how bad this defense is. And my main thing that I've really been hammering the last couple days has been, guys, this defense is historically bad in so many ways right now. So that's the part of the team that really frustrates me right now, because they shouldn't be this bad. They have no excuse to be this awful. And that's the thing that I'm really not letting go as we move forward into these last 4 games. But overall, I think the offense played about as well as you could expect with a backup quarterback in there. There were some things that frustrated me, of course. There were some opportunities for us to do, I think, significant damage in that game, and we just decided to not take it for reasons that will never really make any sense to me. But at the end of the day, they're better than us in pretty much every way imaginable. And when you don't have your starting quarterback, you're not really going to have a shot at things. So there's not going to be a lot of anger here. It's just the fact that I'm kind of numb to it does kind of speak volumes as to how this season's going. But, I'm all about having reasonable expectations here.
Yes, they've definitely, for us in probably the last 5-6 weeks, we've had to bring them down and recalibrate in the proper place where this is got to be looked at. I do see it in much the same way. I'm at a point where I think I've gotten to the acceptance phase of it. I hit that a couple of weeks ago. But this was about the outcome we were expecting. It does suck that it feels like, Brendan, now being the 5th loss that you've suffered against the 49ers, I don't think that you've done anything considerably different from a strategical standpoint in any of those 5 games now. And there's a lot of bad with this to turn over, and a lot of disappointing things to turn over with it. But that's the part that really does get stuck for me a bit in my craw, because you're not trying anything. You're just trying the same old stuff that's failing in these games and hoping the personnel can just overcome. And when the personnel is telling you we are not good enough to simply just overcome, and maybe they just don't have any answers in that bag, but it didn't feel to me like they were dialing up a lot of different answers outside of. Is that a fair assessment from you too, or did you see them do some stuff remarkably different in this game?
I mean, nothing substantial, nothing that actually means anything. Like, we score a touchdown in that game to cut it to, I think, a 5-point game on a double fake screen throw over the middle. But other than that, you're not really attacking the middle of the field all that much. And like you look at that play in isolation, and that's a really nice play. That's the kind of stuff we never do. That's the kind of stuff we want us to do. It's throwing the ball over the middle. It's misdirection. It's trying to, trick the other team into doing things that into believing you're going to do one thing and then doing another thing. That's the kind of stuff we talk about sometimes, but then you don't really see it again the rest of that game. You do it once and it's over. So you see it in little bits and parts, and it works, and you wonder why they don't do it more.
Boy, is it true. Same thing you could apply, I think, Brendan, to the running game. It was early on. You were seeing them work the fly. We got a fly sweep, another one, Brendan. We only get one a game, but it does work once every time they use it once a game. You had some bubble screens. You had them working the edges of the defense with some of the outside runs, and I think there was even maybe a pitch play in there. And they didn't get a lot of yardage on the runs, but it was just good to see them in attack in a different manner and fashion than they have. And they seem to even be getting a little bit of success off of it. We'll start here with this offensive side of the ball, but it did seem like, to your point on that, they guided away from it oddly. Like they got into the second and third quarter, and there seemed to be kind of a conservative streak that overtook everything a little bit. Run on first down, run on second down, and then try to pass on third. Did you feel the same thing from your perspective?
Yeah, there was a lot of run pass out there, and we all know that Seattle has a very long and storied relationship with the run pass.
Goes back to the
Rarely
80s.
does, yeah, rarely does it go well. And to a certain extent, I can understand you've got your backup quarterback out there, but San Francisco also had their backup cornerbacks out there, and Drew Lock actually came out on fire in that game. So I can understand trying to limit the impact that Drew Lock can have on this game, because you understand that he is a backup and you understand that he is a limited player and he is going to make mistakes if you put too much on him. But at the same time, your defense is really, really bad. You might need to score 40 points just to have a chance to win a game. I don't think you're going to get to 40 points by run pass. So I don't understand the committing to that when you know it's just going to result in a loss. It's one thing for a team that has a really good defense, like maybe the Steelers, to do run pass, knowing that it's not going to work all that well, but they might win because their defense is good. But for this Seahawks team right now to think run pass is going to win a game, I mean, I know this game ended up being kind of close, but at the same time, with the way the Niners offense played, it's a miracle they didn't score 50. So I don't know how much I should read into that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the offense had to come into this, and that's that lack of changing any kind of styling from the previous games. Niners have been putting up on this 5-game stretch for the most part. They're putting up well over 20 points, 30 points on you on every given week. And so you have to adjust that then to come in and say, okay, the defense isn't playing as well this year. We're going to have to put points up on the board today. Maybe that's going to then, by having to have that level of aggressiveness, that's going to cause some turnovers and stuff at times. But the alternative is that we cannot rely on our defense to make this happen. And I think that, to your point, there was a moment in this game that stood out in which the coaching staff was telling you just that. We want to rely on our defense. We trust in our defense. You had a 4th and 2 in the second quarter. And it was a play where the analytics are going to tell you to go for it. In my opinion, if you're any other guy, kind of coach out there in the NFL on the sideline, they're telling you just go for it. That's absent understanding that the defense has not played particularly well this year, and that the San Francisco offense is one of the better offenses in the league. But because you had 2 stops in this game and then 1 touchdown in there allowed, sort of, they got into that in that moment of, well, we'll trust them because we've had the 2 stops. No, that's not who your defense is. It's good you've gotten those stops, but you've got to try to go for it there in that moment. And then just sitting back there and doing what they did. And it was even worse, Brendan. I think didn't they took the penalty, but I thought that was exactly an example of what you're talking about, beyond just the run pass, that too. And this team's not good enough to do that. It needs its offense to drive it at times. And we got to go through the rest of this year if they're going to try to win these games. I'm sure there's not a great chance to get to the playoffs or having a lot of success now this year, but try to understand what, read the room as far as your team goes. This defense is going to hold on for dear life the rest of the way through. That is the identity of who they are. Is there things that need to be fixed down the line? Yeah, but you can't operate like your offense is out there just needing to put up 16, 18, 20 points, and that's going to get the job done, especially against the San Francisco team.
Yeah, exactly it. And that honestly goes for even in games against these bad offenses. It's like this team is still living off those 3 really good games they played on defense back early in the season against the Giants, Cardinals, and Bengals. In those 3 games, the defense played great, and in every game since then, they've been pretty awful. Sometimes they've been mildly competent, but they haven't ever, at any point, to my recollection, been really good. And I mean, this game in particular was borderline historic. I don't know if you saw, but 10 yards per play. I mean, 9.9 yards per play is the 15th worst defensive result in NFL history, I think. So I know they only scored 28 points, and I still had the people trying to tell me that, oh, the defense played great. It was the offense. They kept going 3 and out. They kept going 3 and out. And I'm like, you guys know we won time of possession, right? We had the ball more than the Niners did in this game. We ran more plays. We had longer time of possession. And it's like, guys, do you have any idea how fluky it is they didn't drop 50? They had like almost 600 yards of offense.
Yeah. I've seen it at times this year where I've struggled with understanding it, where there's this support thrown to the defense like, no, the defense is fine. And as you said, they've had a couple of performances that have been good against lowly competition, but they are far from not the most major problem on this team. And has the offense underperformed in addition to that? Yeah. Has the special teams underperformed this year in addition to that? Yeah. But they're at least a little bit better than the others, but they're more just they got a couple of warts on them. The other ones, we've got some gaping wounds going down that we got to deal with. But the defense is broken. The defense has been broken, and there's too much assets, there's too much talent, and too much onto it for them to be putting up these kind of performances. As you say, we've gone too often to the Coach Carroll defenses since 2020 for 3 straight seasons. We always find ourselves coming back to the defense and talking about them being historic, and never in a good way. Never in the fun way. It's
Right.
always to the bad side of it, being yards in the air or yards given up to running backs or yards per play. It's all of every little different statistic you can imagine that comes out that just looks really, really bad on that side of it. You talked about the Niners corners going out in this game. And another one of those things that's a longstanding frustration that showed itself up again in this game is you have DK Metcalf come out with two quick catches, gets himself a touchdown on the back shoulder, has a third catch that they have a penalty that they take on the play. So it doesn't count, but he looks like he's starting to steam, starting to get going. Jadarius Ward's like, man, DK is going to be hot today. I'm going to go take a day off. You get the corner out there on the edge now to the replacement up against DK, and we proceed to then not target DK for about the next 2 quarters. Can you make that one make sense to me?
I mean, there's no way to make it make sense. The only thing left to do is try to figure out, why did that happen? Is it a Waldron thing? Is it a Pete thing? Is it a Drew Lock thing? Maybe he's just as somebody who hasn't really played very much football in a very long time here. Maybe he just maybe when the play starts, he just kind of panics and doesn't really think about things like that. And that is something that I wonder, if Gino was in there, would we have maybe seen something a little different? Maybe Gino would have had a little better understanding of something like that. So I can't make any sense of it. I mean, we did see Lockett had a good game, but JSN not really. JSN did not have a good game, and I think he got targeted more than Metcalf, which is insane in a game like this.
He's the most highly targeted player in the receiving core this week was Jackson Smith at 7. Well, what I heard about this, what Drew Lock talked about it, was that when Shadarius Ward went out, they then drifted into cover 2. And so that then meant, I guess, you don't throw to DK anymore. But boy, does that seem a real simplistic attitude towards whether or not you target a number 1 wide receiver, is whether they're running cover 2 or not. It also speaks to the limited route tree that you're having them run. When now, we can't get to our 9 route, and the comeback route's not going to be there, right, Brendan? Because cover 2, the corner's trailing. The 9 route gets destroyed at that point because the corner knows he's got safety help over the top. So you can't run the stop. You can't run a stop. You can't run a comeback. You can't run a 9. And Lord knows we don't like to run the post, which can sometimes beat those. Every once in a while, you can kind of get in there a little bit, though. The cover 2 does kind of put them in there to put the nice shot on them on those plays. But this is where it'd be nice to have a little drag route in there. There's one time we had a play where Drew's dropped back, Brendan, and it's just wild to watch him in times where he won't go to DK with the first read, which again has to come back to coaching, where DK came on a stop route, a nice little feature route to get him a nice easy catch. And he's looking over here to Noah Fant with the first read. And DK's just right open, just looking him right there in the face. And you're going, why would you be looking first thing to him? What it is their alignment that's telling you to go over to on a tough throw to Noah? It wasn't like Noah was wide open over the other side. It was going to be like,
Locke and Fant go way back, I guess. Maybe there's just some kind of rapport there that he doesn't have with Metcalf, because he probably never practices with Metcalf because he's the backup when you think about it, right?
It's probably true. It's probably very true. And that would at least make a little bit of sense for maybe that rapport part was there, is why they were, leaning into it. But I mean, hell, even in Fant's case, he got 4 targets. That's probably a season high for Noah Fant, Brendan. It's probably
Fant played pretty good. I mean, I'm not hating on Fant.
Oh yeah, he was fine.
When Ward went out, I was thinking to myself, I don't know if we're going to win this game or not, but DK might have 200 yards here. And I think there was the opportunity for that. You look at even the broadcast tape of that game, and you see him getting open, and the offensive line held up for part of that game. I know they melted down as the game went on. The offensive line was actually doing a pretty good job at first.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I think they were holding up relatively well to begin things. The play calling was good with Waldron. As we've seen through the year, it just starts to slowly erode as the game goes on. That's how I felt it did. I thought as well that conservative aspect that we talked about came into play. The the line was definitely a little bit of a mixed bag. I think overall not the best. There were some performances that were better than others. PFF like some of the guys. I think more like I didn't think Charles Cross had the day that PFF gave him. I felt like he had a little bit at times some rough sailing, but then they really hated Abraham Lucas's day. They gave him like a 50 grade.
Yeah.
Um, One thing that stood out to me in watching the grades again that was a common part of this offense here was that you just can't run block. You just don't have the ability to open up any holes in your running game, and it's just kind of all across the board. Even in Anthony Bradford, who was so good in that realm early on in the year, 36 run blocking grade in this game. There's no holes. There's so much early penetration on the ground every time we try to run it, Brendan. They've got to find in this offseason is in an offseason where there's a lot of answers at a lot of positions and a lot of answers how you're going to run things philosophy wise and whatnot. The running game has got to get better. You got 2 second-round backs on this. They can't do it all on their own. And that's unfortunately what's going on right now is it's not just a matter of one weak link on the offensive line. It's that every play there's 2 weak links that are letting the floodgates open and everything's sort of, it is dead on arrival at that point. And the whole play is, and they got to just try to, scratch their way out for a 2-yard gain.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously there's going to be an opportunity to turn over the interior offensive line this offseason, which is very exciting. And that's one reason why I would really like to see some Oluwatimi these last 4 games, so we can get at least a feel for whether or not maybe we need to prioritize getting a center. I really do like Oluwatimi, and I think he is the center of the future. But we need to start trying to find that out. We need to actually try to figure that out, because if he doesn't, then there's going to be some good centers in this upcoming draft, and I don't want to pass on them and then find out next year that Oluwatimi sucks,
Mm-hmm.
and another year where things are not going to work out. Like Evan Brown, he's not even snapping the ball to Geno well. Like there are the quarterback, I should say.
Yeah.
Like there were 3 balls that almost went over Locke's head in this game.
Yeah. I agreed. Yeah, and PFF actually liked his game, so maybe he's feeling the heat to try to perform. But I'd agree with you at this point. I don't see how you're really going to get into the playoffs here. You technically could, you mathematically could, but I don't know why you don't look at it more into getting some of the young guys in certain positions out there where it could help, and you can get a look at what they can do, so you can make a better assessment in this offseason about the personnel
Mhm.
specifically.
Yeah, it's not about tanking. I'm not talking about tanking,
No.
but honestly, the way Evan Brown's playing, I don't think that Oluwatimi is going to be able to be that much worse. Like he could be a little bit worse, but it's not really going to be a seismic shift towards the offense being even worse than it is. Like it'll be maybe this much worse, but it could also be a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, and there's an added value into getting him some seasoning now if you're looking at maybe making him actually that center next year, giving him a chance to have his feet wet and, figure out again, is he the guy or do we got to make this a bigger priority this offseason and the way we look at it? Um, I don't know if there's a lot here more to turn over offensively in this game, Brendan, because the fact that it was just such a similar offensive game to the style that we've seen. A hot start that quickly goes cold, conservative game planning as the game wears on, an offensive line that slowly kind of falls apart in pass protection, but never really run blocks at any point in time good throughout the game. You only averaged 3.5 yards per carry in this game, and that's really was bolstered by a 23-yard run early on by Charbonnet. It wasn't that you were anywhere near, you're really about 2.5 on the day. So it's not much to really from us on a perspective. It gets hard on these games, Brendan, as we analyze these. You're not losing in a different way, are you? It becomes a little bit of the same story points that we're bringing up on a given week about what's causing the losses to happen. Just this sounds, we'll get to the defense in a second, but just specifically on the offensive side of the ball, is that a fair way to look at it from your perspective as well?
I I'm hard pressed to believe they're doing anything differently during the week, and it just looks like that every single game day. And again, I mean, we're playing the best defense in the league. I'm not saying that anything you did would have worked really well, but and I understand that the team is still alive in the playoffs, but to a certain extent, you should be using this time to experiment. You've lost now 4 games in a row. It was 3 games going into this game, which that has not happened very much since Pete got here. So you would think they would try something new at some point. even if it wouldn't necessarily work. And again, I want to stress this: we see little pieces of it, and it's just really confusing that we don't see it more. Like the Colby Parkinson touchdown in this game, that was very unlike pretty much everything we've seen from the offense this year. It works really, really well. It's a really cool play, and then the most of the rest of the game, you just see them going outside the numbers on every play of any consequence. You see them continuing to run out routes over and over and over again. And it doesn't really make sense because when you tried weird stuff, it actually worked.
It did. It did. And you're like, those plays do stand out. The fly sweep you get for 10 yards, the screen game there, these things stand out because you just don't hardly ever go to them. And yet you do find success when you do go to them. But it is just that same story every week, Brendan, where the counterintuitive nature of things rears its ugly head once again, as far as that goes. Jordan, thank you for becoming a new member of the channel. I'm not sure if that's mine or Brennan's, but thank you for joining up on that. Appreciate you
Welcome,
for that.
Jordan.
Welcome, Jordan. Welcome on in. Welcome on in to the Seahawks, Brandon Nelson, Hawks Nest. Anything else you figure we didn't cover on the offense here? As I said, not a lot to necessarily go through with it, but I think that's kind of from my perspective about all that there is with it when I look at this offense right now.
Yeah, again, it's just when you see Drew Lock out there instead of Geno, you do kind of go like, well, what do you think's going to happen, right? Yeah, do you really think you're going to do that much with your backup quarterback out there playing with a bunch of players he probably never practices with? And remember, Geno was trying to play all week, so Drew Lock probably didn't even get to practice very much with the starters this week, much less all season. So, I'm not even really that upset at the offense in terms of the results. Like, I think that if you went into that game and you knew that Drew Lock was going to get the start, and you said you're going to score 2 touchdowns and a field goal, I probably would have said, I think that's going to maybe have to be enough against that defense. Now, if you want to win that game, your defense just needs to do something special, and they didn't.
Yeah, it's true. I feel that way about Drew Lock too. But as you and I both look at Drew Lock, we look a little different than I think that some of the fans do, where it's like, I see him as he's got some close aspects to Geno's level of play and what he brings, but he gives you the little bit of the higher turnover component in his game than Geno does. Geno can be a little bit safer with the football. And I think that's basically what he gave you in this game. Also disappointing to see another Seahawks quarterback that seems to refuse to use their legs. I don't know what it is with these guys being, you can use the slide rule if there's a free 5 or 6 or 7 yards in front of you. I don't know what this tendency is to have to try to like laser beam a throw in with the defender, layered in over the top of your receiver who's not open, but you're going to try to laser into a small window of throw when you could just take a 6 or 7 yard gain sometimes on a first down. There's a couple of those plays out there in this game from Drew Lock, and Geno's done it throughout this year too. And I know they're trying to protect themselves, but again, you get a slide. You go to your 5 yards, you get your slide, you don't take a hit. So I don't know what this is. It does get frustrating though, Brendan, with an offense that does struggle to move. The Seahawks quarterback's unwillingness to use their legs when both of these guys are relatively mobile. And at least I know Geno's dealing with some leg injuries, but at least I know that is what's supposed to be the whole thing. Drew Lock, people were telling me Drew Lock can at least move. Drew Lock's got legs. Where were they at? I didn't see him much this last game, Brendan.
Yeah, I agree, but I do understand. It's kind of like I feel like you're seeing this a little bit in Buffalo too, where the coaches told Josh Allen, you need to start protecting yourself. It's you gaining a few yards is not worth us losing you for the season.
Yeah.
So there's probably a little bit of that going on there, but I don't think that's the right thing to do.
No, I don't think it is either. You've got to take advantage of those times when they present themselves, and you can't be scared to do it. A lot of the good quarterbacks do it, including Mahomes, who's not even all that mobile. He takes those yards when they're there to get. Well, let's turn over to the more unfortunate part of this game. And that would be, of course, a defense. Defense, as you said, that would have given over 10 yards of play if not for the victory formation kneel downs. They would have been well over 10 yards of play in this game. They still ended up somewhat right around there.
9.9.
McCaffrey, 9.9. McCaffrey averaging 9 yards a carry. Jordan Mason on 4 carries, averaging 5 yards a carry. Purdy going Brock pop gun arm. Purdy going for 368 and a 13.6 average per attempt. What the hell happened to our defense in this game, Brendan?
I mean, is it really that radically different than what we've seen them do most of the year?
N-
Like,
No.
it's just you're playing on the road against a really, really good offense. Like, it was probably a little bit better than last week against Dallas, but you can't really be worse than what you did against Dallas. You have zero legitimate stops against that team. So at least this week we had a couple turnovers and a few punts forced, but I honestly I don't know how we held them to 28 points. Like I
Yeah.
don't know how we held them to 28 points, given the fact that they racked up. They would have had 600 if they didn't lay on the ball at the end of the game. Like that's the thing. If they didn't
Mm.
lay on the ball at the end, they would have easily gotten to 600 yards.
That's it.
And
Well, sorry, go ahead.
it's just kind of the same typical stuff. A lot of third downs, you play soft zone and give it up. Like we had a 3rd and 11 where we just ran back into our zones 80 yards down the field, gave it up. QB pressure, very inconsistent. Leonard Williams was a monster, though. I do want to say there are some guys here who deserve to be called out positively. Leonard Williams, absolute monster. So shout out to him. He's
Mhm.
not to blame here. He's not to blame for
No.
any of this.
No, four tackles, a sack, 4 quarterback hits, and a pass defense. He did his job in this day, and he's done his job since he's come over from the Giants. I know it's a controversial trade here, Brendan, and we'll turn over, and we'll have to see if he does get to be resigned here. But he has brought his part of the bargain to play. It's not he didn't there. He's been some radically different player or vastly underperformed from what we thought we were getting. He has given you just what you were hoping he was going to be able to provide, but the supporting parts around him have unfortunately failed at the same time that that's occurred.
But once again, another game where Woolen can't tackle, and again, Shanahan is smart enough to attack that over and over and over again, and Woolen just can't keep up. So that's going to be a real problem going forward here because Shanahan's probably going to be in this division for a very long time, and Woolen's either going to figure it out or he's going to be sitting on the bench every time we play the 49ers, I guess. Losing Witherspoon on the first, what was it, the second drive of the game obviously hurts. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like that didn't affect what we were able to do defensively. Obviously, Witherspoon in there is probably a lot better. But I don't think we win that game with him. I don't think it radically changes the outcome. And it's a game where not only did you get beat, you got beat over the top too. So you can't even say you prevented the big play. Like a lot of these Seahawks defenses that have not been very good, at least you can say they don't give up the big play. They make the other offense earn everything. In this game, that wasn't even close to being the case. We gave up several big plays. I think there were like they had maybe 4 plays of 50 plus yards, I think, something like that. So even that part's breaking down. Remember early in this year, even when the defense wasn't playing well, we were great against the run. We had an elite run defense. That's broken down. Like
Mm.
everything is just broken down. I feel like it's because we have a lot of players who are older and we were leaning on them very heavily all season, just hoping they would hold up, and they're starting to break down. Guys like Jaron Reed just can't give it their all every snap. Bobby Wagner, I think, is running out of gas. And that's something that should have been thought about earlier this season. That's something that Pete should have prepared for and said, okay, we're going to come up with some contingency plan so we don't have to completely lean on these older players. And he didn't. So there it is.
No, he didn't, and some of it being driven by some other factors where Leonard Williams comes in, you move Draymond more to the outside because you're having to overcome your edge group, and it does come down to buying into players being something that they're not. Darrell Taylor is something that this team thought he was that he's not. Frank Clark's something that he's not. There's a lot of these guys too that they counted on to hopefully give them those good snaps, and I'll tell you, when you get Darrell Taylor to one side of the field and then Tariq Woolen's on his outside shoulder, look out for the outside pitch, right? Because
Yeah.
why wouldn't you attack that all day long if you're Shanahan? I mean, it'd be ridiculous not to do so. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of assessing it as well. I think that you also just stuck into your kind of same old tendencies. As it was mostly front four. Yeah, you're right. You did get beat over the top, for instance, on one play where you're blitzing, but again, it's them blitzing from a just completely stupid standpoint. I like double A gap blitzes with Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner. I don't like double A gap blitzes that are going to leave Jamal Adams in cover 2. I don't understand what this coaching staff has seen at this point of Jamal Adams to believe that him in cover 2 is a good thing. We saw this in 2020 over and over again. Some of the biggest moments of failed defensively that season was Jamal back in coverage. I struggle to understand why it is they keep going back to it, thinking that he's like something that he's not. You get him up near the line of scrimmage, that's what you use him for. I know he messed up the coverage as well on that, but that's just, you've got a receiver running free into his zone and he's going to try to pick it up. I don't trust that that's going to work, especially a guy like Deebo Samuel running through. That's a pretty good receiver at that. But they didn't blitz a lot in this game still again. I don't think there was a high prevalence of it. There wasn't a high prevalence of man coverage. Any of the things you and I talked about as some of the adjustments, they used a little bit offensively early on. I don't think they used much of anything that we said that they should do defensively at all. I don't think the Niners would do anything crazy to us. They just kind of play the game that they do with us. You probe around the edges of the defense. You'll eventually find your holes. You'll find the holes in the secondary. There was plenty of time for Purdy to set up most of the time. There was a little bit of pressure here and there, but most of the time as the game wore on, he was pretty clean back there. Tough though. Again, this like the offense, Brendan, where we try to say, let's find some specific things that may be different week to week, or they're trying this week and they tried that week. Really can't. You kind of tried the same stuff this week to see if it would work against the team, and it didn't. You couldn't hold up. And you didn't have any answers or adjustments really throughout this game as it started to get worse and worse and worse. Like you said, there should have been much worse. You had, like, for instance, the play to Brandon Ayuk where he catches the 50-yarder and then Trey Brown, or not Trey Brown, but Julian Love dives at him and, Superman punches the ball out there to kind of flip the field and get you the ball back. But there's not really much right now for our defense to build on either. Les, you also said you had the run game early on. You don't have that. You had a little bit of pressure early on. You were getting that started to fall away. You got a couple turnovers in this game, which was great. One was kind of luck where the receiver runs the wrong route and then tips the ball up when he's trying to jump for the ball. And the other one, you got a Superman knockout. It wasn't necessarily, just purely good even on those. There's something kind of, because Ayuk was open on that play that he tipped it back up to Julian Love. It wasn't like he wasn't, he was covered. So I don't know. I'm a little bit at times, Brendan, without any sort of things that come to my mind extra that we can say about this. I mean, can you, as far as your look at this goes, I mean, it just sort of is what it is. It's a big pile of turds, and there's not really much good in there to pull from. Yeah, Leonard Williams, I thought, played well. I think he has played well. He's had 3 sacks for us since he's come back here and arrived.
Every game he's delivering pressure, it feels like.
Yeah, he's bringing, it feels like, his part of the bargain to bear. I think that certainly Maffei's come back down to earth. I don't know if he's getting more double teams, but his production has completely fallen off as far as pressures go and on those numbers. I mean, maybe he's dealing with an injury. Derek Hall, the rookie, had just a couple of snaps in this game and gave you nothing in those snaps. He looks like a guy that looks kind of far away from being, he's not giving you a Boye Maffei season from last year. It's even far away from that. I guess Draymond Jones gave you a sack. So you got another guy. He'll be up around 5 or 6 sacks this year. Might look, when he finishes out, so his season might look somewhat better than I think it's kind of felt like. But was there anybody else that played a good game out there on the? I mean, this is what happens. You give up 600 yards of offense. Just about. There's really not many people you're going to be able to point to or look at that you go, "Yay, this guy."
I let me think here. Yeah, there's really not much to say. Derek Hall is basically unplayable, by the way. Like, it's not even like, oh, he's having a rough rookie year. And I don't really have too much to add on to it other than that. I try to view the alternative perspective. I read things from people that are trying to defend this defense. Not just the Muppets who just say, oh, well, they were tired because the offense goes 3 and out every drive, which, I don't pay attention to those people. I'm trying to see it from these other people's perspectives, and I just can't do it. Like, this defense, I already made a video about this, but let's really talk about this. This defense is, in terms of points per game ranking, the worst Pete Carroll's ever put together right now. I think it's 27th. The worst he's ever done is 25th. Which was his first year here. And I played this game before. Go look at the players we had on the 2010 defense. Our best players were probably David Hawthorne and I guess Chris Clemens. Because Earl Thomas was a rookie. And if you go back and read the stuff Earl Thomas said about his rookie year, he said, I almost got benched because I didn't know what I was doing. I know he had the 5 interceptions, but that was, a rough learning curve for him for sure. It had washed up Lawyer Malloy. It had washed up Marcus Trufant, Lofa Tatupu right before his legs fell off. The that defense had like no talent whatsoever. Red Bryant, I think, missed most of the season with an injury. So you can't even say they had Red Bryant. I think they had Brandon Mebane most of the season. I guess he's good, but Leroy Hill was just about washed up. How is that defense producing better results than this defense?
I agree. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense at all, especially having so many assets poured into this defense beyond the talent, just the assets you put into it. Jamal Adams at this point, it's going to just become, it's going to start transitioning here, isn't it, from a couple of weeks ago of, I think we need to maybe do this as a post June 1st designation to it being pretty unanimously of this needs to happen and as soon as possible, as far as he's just not bringing anything to the football field at this point.
Yeah, he's made this very easy. And I know Pete loves him. I know Pete loves Adams, but I don't know why. He has no interest in using him in a way that's even remotely close to the way he needs to be used. Like I hear that Pete loves having Adams, and it makes me think that we really might keep him another year because Pete loves him so much. But then I see how he gets utilized on the field, and it's like, how can you possibly love this guy if you're dropping him back 40 yards in coverage on Deebo Samuel on 3rd and 11? When even in previous years, we've seen that on 3rd down, passing downs, we like to blitz Jamal Adams. And that's probably how you should be using him in this situation. The Niners do not have a very good offensive line. They have a quarterback that you need to get some pressure on. It's 3rd and 11. So why not just send Jamal on the blitz? No, you're going to have him 40 yards down the field. And yeah, that's it really kind of confuses some of the things that Pete Carroll says versus what he does just really confuses me.
Yeah, me too. I think they also have this has been a growing thing in the last couple of years. And to your point on him liking Jamal, they've got guys that they just sort of fall in love with, and sometimes it doesn't always make sense why this guy is the guy you guys are saying. I understand Jamal, you made your trades and you did all that, but like you say, then you put in the usage and the weird usage on him. Some of it just doesn't make a terrible amount of sense to me. Another guy in that lane, Darrell Taylor, 1 tackle in this game. He's on pace for about 5 sacks this year. He's going to probably double the amount of snaps he had last year when it's all said and done. Another guy, we have another year of club control, but I don't think you can rely on this guy going in the future. There were some of those runs going to his side where he just got cleared out so easily out of the hole. I mean, he's 4 or 5 yards downhill by the time the back's crossing the line of scrimmage. And I, as much as he might give you some pop as far as a pass rusher at a nice rate, it seems like we need to get some edges here that can play run D and rush the passers rather than just the one trick pony who can only kind of do one thing.
Yeah, I really try to not get really mad at players right now, especially on this defense, because I feel like you could put together a unit of all pros and it still wouldn't produce good results right now. Like, this defense added Leonard Williams and gave up nothing to get him and got worse. Like it's like the players don't matter. It's like the players are almost an, what do they call that? Where it's like an inverse relationship, an inverse correlation between the talent and the results.
Yeah. I'd agree with you.
Yeah, and you could go back to 2018. That defense had very little talent and was actually pretty good. It was a little above average. That defense had nowhere near the talent of this defense. That defense had Wagner, Frank Clark, Jaron Reed had a career year, and that's it, right? Because Earl Thomas broke his leg. KJ Wright didn't play that year. We had guys like, God, who was that one linebacker we had? That was like one of the Michael Kendricks years. That was the Austin Calitro year. How is that defense so much better than this one? It defies expectations.
It does. It doesn't add up, and something's holding it back. I think to your point, the scheme and their philosophies are just getting exposed right and left to where it's just antiquated and old, and it's not working anymore. And that's where I think you can dump all the talent in the book you won this offseason into it. This defense, to me, I've seen enough to say this defense is not working anymore. It's not going to get you back to the old range just by stuffing a bunch of talent. You'll not overcome the deficiencies of the scheme with talent. You eventually need to get the scheme on point as well and put the players in better positions for success. And unfortunately, the confidence in Coach Carroll to be able to do that, as he does seem just so married to this scheme, it's, to death, it seems. And I will not make any real major adjustments off it. And it'll eventually find its way to working again. But there seems little proof of that. Not really very many stats you can go off of with this defense that indicates any kind of bright future coming up in any respect. And that's kind of hard to do. Every defense has got something it does, something. But
Yeah.
you don't do anything well. I mean, there's just rushing the passer and tackling and coverage and man coverage, zone coverage, blitzing. Yeah, I guess you blitz pretty well, but then you don't want to do that very often. So those are that becomes even limited in itself. We got a couple donos here. Garth Knight in the house. What's up, Garth? He says, Brendo, your video calling out Pete for his 710 interview was brilliant yesterday. How pathetic is this guy?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, a lot of people didn't like that video. I have never received so much negative feedback on a video ever, I don't think. So that I appreciate that some people got something out of it, but I don't think that video was taken by everybody in the way in which I intended it. So thank you for liking it.
It's hard ground to go over with this when you've got to cover things that are in the negative aspect of it, and you're just trying to be honest with the fan base. And some people in the fan base will have, as I call them, sacred cows that they don't want you to be talking about, and they don't want to hear what the points you're making. It's just you're attacking the sacred cow is all they kind of hear on that. And I don't know what were they bristling about.
Oh, well, they were basically just saying, well, Pete was right to throw Adams and Love under the bus because they suck and they did screw up. So Pete's right to blame them. And that might be true, but ask yourself this, and I might even have to make up a follow-up video on this because I think people aren't understanding this. Why is he doing it on the radio? Why is he doing it where thousands of people are going to hear it? Maybe tens or hundreds of thousands are going to hear it. Why isn't he just giving stupid non-answers like he always does and just, pulling the old Russell Wilson, oh, we need to be better and it starts with me. Just do that over and over again. The media will let you do that. You don't have to give a real answer. And then go behind closed doors at the VMAC and tell Adams and Love, okay, you guys need to knock this off. We how to do this. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Why would he say it in public? Why would he say it on the radio where everybody hears it? Because things are going poorly and he desperately needs other people to be blamed for it so he can continue to play this endless game of Survivor. I mean, I said in the end of that video that Pete Carroll might be a bad coach, but he would be the greatest ever contestant on Survivor because he gets everyone else voted off the island. And not only that, he brings in other people from off the island, puts them on the island, and then a couple years later gets them voted off the island too. It is a never-ending game of Survivor, and he's really, really good at it.
He is. And I do the math in the same way you did on that, in that I don't have a problem with you bringing up the players, but then at what point are you going to be bringing up your culpability and your scheme's culpability in this, especially when it's so clear to so many different people across the board, not just us in our perspective, but you see this across the board being talked about, that this team is held back by the coaching staff, that when it comes to game day, they are not getting any advantages against the other staff, and they're giving up all the advantages to the other staff. Where is the acknowledgement of that? Where is the lack of taking responsibility for the fact you said you were going to make changes here to both sides of the ball, and those changes have not been implemented? And instead, it's back to he was calling out. I think after the Cowboys game, there was some with the coordinators. I think there was one thing with the offensive coordinator, how he called it, and it's just it's everybody else's fault but my fault kind of thing. And the problem with that is I don't have a problem with a coach that's maybe doesn't want to take a lot of the blame or he pushes. That's okay. It's not bad in itself, but when we get to then you correcting the real big issues at hand, where me and Brennan, I think, worry about this as we start to push this forward to the next step of this process is it's player problem, player bad, player do wrong, player coach do wrong, coach not me do wrong. So then you never end up dealing with your base issues or things that you need to correct in your own stuff because it's always somebody else. And that's the worry right now with Coach Carroll is if he's here to begin the future, he's got to fix this stuff if we're going to have hope of being a contender. It's not just merely to add on more talent. And he's not going to do that if he never acknowledges there's actually a problem here. And those kind of quotes kind of do indicate that a little bit. Like you said, he's already sort of setting up the Pats. He's a little bit already ahead of time a bit.
Yeah. And why are these players here? If Jamal Adams can't play in your system, well, who brought Jamal Adams here? If Julian Love can't play in your system, who brought Julian Love here? Like, you are the head coach and vice president of personnel on this team. Like, if the players are not good at these things, then you shouldn't have brought them in. if the players are not being coached right or they're not executing rightly, you're in charge of getting them ready during the week. Like everything comes back to you. And when I hear what he said on 710, I feel like he just doesn't get it. And I feel like he doesn't understand that. I just hear we went through this in 2021. Remember 2021? Pretty much after every single game, I remember Pete would get in the post-game press conference and throw Russell under the bus and be like, oh, we really wish Russ didn't do that. We really wish he had done this instead of that. And he can be correct, but why is he saying it in public? Like he can, and remember, I went back to this, the after 2020, that offseason where we almost traded Russell to the Bears and we didn't. And earlier that offseason, Wilson came out with that statement of like, I'm tired of getting hit so much. Remember all that stuff? And that was a really bad thing. And after the trade drama was over, Pete did come out and say, yeah, Russell broke the rules. You're not supposed to air out dirty laundry. You're not supposed to come out and criticize your offensive line in public. And we told him, you better never do that again. You better never throw your teammates under the bus in public again. So this is one of his rules, and he breaks it every single week now because I think he knows things are going really badly and somebody else needs to take the blame for it. And the thing is, he doesn't even have to do that. We all know he's not getting fired. We all know he's going to be the head coach as long as he wants to be right now. So why is he doing it? Because
he doesn't want to change.
Yeah, he doesn't want to change, and he wants to get at least some of the fan base off his back. He wants to convince some of the fans that it's not his fault.
That's right. He doesn't have to convince everybody. He's just got to convince a good enough segment of the fan base so that there's not a loud enough call for him to have that change put through this offseason, for instance. And I think that it is that, Brendan. That's at least where I come to my mind is I go, why wouldn't he do it? Like you say, if he knows he's going to be here kind of regardless, it's not that he's doing it to save his job. I mean, maybe a little bit to get those people, like I say, on board with him. But I think it just comes down to the real issue here at the base of our problems, beyond personnel, beyond players you're paying a lot of money that you're not getting the performance out of. The base problem comes on to is that you're not adapting, modernizing, whatever word you want to apply to what needs to happen on both sides of the ball. You've not been doing that, but most especially you haven't been doing that on the defense. And that's the thing that he doesn't want to seem to embrace because he has fought it at every turn. He himself, when he said they were going to make the change 2 years ago, Brendan said, we've been doing this old way probably far too long. At that point, it was far too long. And now we're 2 years later and you're still doing it. And absent these little changes they've done along the way. And I just think that that's the part that's going to be the most important part if he's going to remain here into the future to find any optimism in this team, is that it has to be at the forefront of Coach Carroll radically changing his approach on both sides of the ball and understanding that this is not the game it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. It is the modernized NFL, which has got different rules and different ways to go about your business than you did in the past. And you're not really updating with that.
Right.
Garth with another $5 donation. Thank you for that, Garth. Says, in Pete's defense, he did give props to Leo Williams.
Yeah, I mean, he deserves it.
He does deserve it, and he's played well for them since coming here. So probably also doing a little bit of buttering up for hopefully trying to get him on. I'm sure they're maybe even right now trying to negotiate with him on a contract extension because they could do that right now if they wanted to. They have a good amount of cap space that they left unspent this year that you could put a new deal together if you potentially want to do with Leonard right now. So don't know if they would, but that may be something that they're trying to get done there. But good that he did. Leonard had himself a very impressive game at that. So, and I've loved his addition. He's got us, Brendan. I think just what I hoped that he would bring to the stage. He's brought into the stage in our respective things. Anything else on this defense that we maybe didn't, take a look at or run through the drag over concrete for a couple hundred yards at high speeds?
I mean, there's not really a lot to say other than what's already been said. I mean, all of it's bad except for Leonard Williams, right? Leonard Williams played good. Everyone else was awful. And it's hard to break it down much further than that because it was such a really distinctly awful performance. I'm just trying to think of some other way to go with it, right? I'm having a hard time.
I don't have a lot else either. I think Bobby gives you still some good moments in some games. 2 tackle for loss, got some tackles, but like you say, there's some moments too where it looks like he's wearing down. Certainly Witherspoon made a great play on that pass defense out there in coverage. Every time he plays, even though he plays for a couple of snaps, he's going to give you something that's going to be impressive and get you, really encouraged about him, moving into the future. Well, the one last thing I want to talk about a little bit, just because it was the final thing of the deal, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I think you have the same opinion I do on it. I'm glad that I've seen Seahawks fans coming to DK's defense after the end of this game, because I think there's so many fans that sometimes pile on DK and want to point a finger at him and say, naughty, naughty, naughty. And this was one moment I was happy to see the majority of fans seem to have recognized what actually happened and went down on that play. And it was good to see that he was getting the support post tense on that one rather than it going the other way as it has so many times this year.
Yeah, for the most part, I think people have the right perspective on the Metcalf thing. It was 3 minutes left in the game. The game was over. We weren't going to win. Like, we have real problems on this team. Metcalf getting ejected at the end of a game that was over is not really one of them. Like, I don't really care. He was, in his mind standing up for himself, I think, and I don't have a big problem with that. It's too bad that it went down that way. I know he's actually been kind of keeping everything suppressed a little bit over the last I'd say 2 months now. I don't think he's had a 15-yard flag thrown on him in about 2 months here. So I got no real issue with what DK did. Vast majority of these things that, these flags that get thrown on him, these things where he kind of gets a little out of line, happen after the game's already over and they don't really affect the game all that much. So even on that level, I don't understand why people get so upset about it. But I think people also need to understand that not every single player on your team is going to be some model citizen, Boy Scout, perfect guy. You are going to have some wild cards. And that's kind of a necessity to actually win a Super Bowl. Like, think of all the wild cards we had on our Super Bowl team. A lot. So you don't need every single player to be a leader. I had one guy in my postgame chat saying DK is supposed to be a leader. And I was like, no, he's not. No, he's here to play. He's a player. He's a very, very talented player. The leaders on this team are going to be guys like Lockett. They're going to be guys like Wagner. They're going to be guys like maybe, I don't know, Jaron Reed. In a weird way, I would throw Nick Ballore in there, but DK's not really meant to be a leader, and I don't think we should ask him to be one. He's a player. You get your leadership from other players. So,
yeah, and I do think that there was a cheap shot that caused that play to happen as well. It wasn't a matter
100%.
of somebody said something to him and he started to get at him. I mean, this is a guy that had his neck surgically repaired, and Fred Warner takes both of the back of his hands to the back of his neck and pushes down as hard as he can. I've said about this that if Fred Warner had snapped his vertebrae at that point and rebroken an old injury, he would have walked off with a big old smile on his face. And that's where, if I'm in DK's place, I'm getting right back up in that moment as well. And we'll be a leader. And like, this is a man's sport. I come at it often. It's like people got to realize, like, you don't just walk on the field with this good guy attitude and expect that's going to get you through. You got to go on the field and play with an edge. And anybody, if you're at a high school level that's played football at even about Pee Wee level, recognizes that. You recognize what happens when you walk in that field with this kind of just, and a guy does that to you, you got to stand up for yourself. And it's unfortunate DK's had these other incidences that make this one look worse, but this is one where we got to have his back, in my opinion, on this one, where there's no bad to DK on this one. It didn't cost you the game. He reacted as you're going to have to react if a guy cheap shot you like that. And you got to, you don't just.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like this stuff gets put on blast way more because I'm sure you've seen how every single week the NFL hands out like 300 fines to a bunch of players for like, oh, this guy lowered his head when he was getting tackled by the linebacker. That's a penalty. That's a fine. And every week, I don't know if this used to happen. I feel like it didn't.
No.
But every week it feels like there are like 20 fines and stuff. And this stuff really gets blown up. But, I just ask people to keep things in perspective and understand that these things, again, it was something that happened after the game was over. DK did not get ejected in the first quarter and derail all of our offensive game plans. It was something that happened. I'm sure he's aware. I'm sure he's aware that the game is already a wrap and he can go do whatever he wants to do and it's not going to affect anything. It's like in the 90s when Dennis Rodman would pick up his sixth foul and then he'd be like, well, I may as well get my second technical too. I may as well go scream at somebody until I get another technical because I'm already out of the game.
That's right.
So let's,
They call that getting your money's worth, Brendan.
Yeah.
get your money's worth. Well, good to hear that you kind of landed in the same place I do, and it's good to hear the fans did, as there has been some of that sensitivity towards him. I just like to hear that we were. I like to see people having the DKs back. I'd like him to remain here in the future. I think he's part of what can help us win the future. He's not going to be a hindrance in that respect of things. Got another dono here from Cameron. Thank you, Mr. Cameron, for that. With the $5 says maybe Pete is lashing out because he's feeling his seat getting warm. We should consider the possibility that Jody does care. I'm going to get an answer to this question this offseason, Brendan. But what do you think on that?
I don't see it. Like, if somebody could give me some reason to believe that something could happen that would get Pete out of here, even if it took like losing out, I might even be able to like get behind that a little bit. I don't believe in tanking. I think tanking is stupid. I think tanking's for losers. And I don't want to breed that kind of culture in my team that, oh, just stop trying and willingly lose. Like, I don't want to do that. If somebody could convince me that, hey, we're going to fire Pete Carroll if we lose out, then I might be like, yeah, okay, then there's actually something to gain. I could maybe talk myself into that, but I don't see it. I don't see it. I really don't. Maybe we're going to tune in on Monday night next week against the Eagles. Maybe I'm going to turn the game on and the whole stadium's going to be empty, or it's going to be like 10,000 Eagles fans and no Seahawks fans.
Nothing but the bad green.
Yeah, and then the Titans game, same thing, where the stadium's just like, I remember some of those games in the 90s watching the highlight package on ESPN, and they would show there is nobody at this game. It's like a Marlins game. And you don't really see that anymore, but maybe it'll be like that, and then it'll be like, whoa, wait a minute, I think Jody cares about this. But yeah.
You think that would get her attention? Cameron, I do kind of share a little bit of Brennan's reticence to think that this is what's going to happen. I think certainly Pete's hearing calls from general public and from talking heads like Brendan and me and 710s and the radios, and there's more pressure and heat on them than there's maybe ever been here in his time in Seattle. And I think that is driving him at things to do things that are, for instance, calling out players, which has not been a normal thing that he's done. It's having him maybe extend outside of himself. But I've been told in the background by some people too, Cameron, as well, that, maybe you're feeling on Jody's not quite accurate as much as you think, where she's actually is more invested than you might think she is. And I'm okay with being proven wrong on this. I'm open to it. But my whole thing with this is the proof is in the pudding. And if you let a coach who's 1-5 in the playoffs the last 7 years, who's about to miss the playoffs this year, who hasn't been to Super Bowl 10 years ago, and you're going to go through another offseason of him doing the same old thing, that doesn't indicate care. Where does the indications come from Jody's perspective on this, that this guy's trending in the right direction? He's there to lead us to the promised land here and now. It's why the calls are so loud. It's why the Coach Carroll stands have become so quiet, Brendan, because it gets to a point of being undeniable. It gets to a point where a grandma who barely watches football and casually watches the hockey game as she goes to the kitchen on her way to get some food will go, man, maybe it's time for Carroll to move on. It's getting to that point of things. So this will be the off season, to your point, Cameron. This is my off season. If I'm not sure on this. Brendan's not sure on this of whether or not Jody's that invested, because we don't know. We can't look behind the curtain. We can't look and go meet with Mrs. Oz. But if she goes through this offseason, she takes those steps, which looks so much, I would say, at least to the very minimum, the majority of fans, to be the proper step to take at this point, then that's indicative she cares. If it's another one of like, let's let him play out through his contract, that's more indicating now of I really don't want to have to hire a new coach. I'm going to be selling the team soon. Just let him play through the contract. As long as we're sort of like, okay, middle of the road minimum, then that's enough to keep the fans invigorated to fill up that stadium. Because I don't think, Brendan, we're going to get an empty stadium. You'll get maybe the tickets sold, but that's half a dozen 1-6 another to an owner. As long as the tickets are being sold, that's the only problem that matters. So there'll be a lot of Eagle fans in the stadium, or Steeler fans in a couple of weeks. But that doesn't indicate necessarily that she's going to change for those reasons, I don't think. But we'll learn, Cameron. I truly believe we'll know. The answer's been a little bit in questioning in recent years. This will be the year that we'll actually get, I think, a firm yay or nay on it.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's very easy to talk yourself into, oh, it's year 2 of a rebuild, right? Like, we all thought we were going to be bad last year. We're just bad this year instead. I think it's very easy to talk yourself into that. And I've said this before. Most owners are looking for a reason to not fire somebody. They're not looking for a reason to fire somebody. They're trying to find some justifiable excuse for what's going on, and they're like, we're gonna stick to this path. The exception would be like the Philadelphia. I think they look for reasons to fire a coach and are very proactive in it. But most of these teams, I don't see it. I don't know why. Because
do you think that's as much the case the last 5 or 6 years when we really think about some of these coaches that have gone through? I agree with you that if I go back 10 years, that's 100% the case. 100%. But if I went back like the last 5 or 6 years as a recent trend in the NFL, I mean, we have Frank Reich this year, who doesn't even make it a full season into his stay there at Carolina. And he's already now been whisked through from Indianapolis twice through. You've got the Raiders with the amount of times that they're blown through their guys. I mean, you're going to have Bill Belichick 3 years removed from a Super Bowl, and they're going to usher him out of town. Staley's going to probably be gone after 3 years in San Diego, LA. I mean, and there were some calls even last year. He was barely holding on for dear life. It feels like the timeline on this type of stuff is sped up a little bit.
A little bit. I mean, honestly, the fact that Staley's still there at all is, I think, kind of proving my point, not disproving it. Like, Staley should have been gone last year for sure, 100%. The fact that he's still there, I think, is kind of proof that these owners are trying to. They don't want to have to pay out the money. They don't want to have to pay a coach a ton of money to not coach for them. I do think we are getting away from that now, though, and this is another reason why this frustrates me. Every single year, it seems like there are at least one, often two coaches that come out of nowhere, become a head coach, and they're good. It's not like the 90s. In the 90s, there were like 6 good coaches, and there were no other good coaches. And if you didn't have one of those 6, you were just hosed.
Yeah.
There's nothing you could do. But now it's like, this year, Steichen and Gannon are both looking actually pretty good. Like, I know Gannon could easily burn out quickly here, but he looks good. Last year, you had the Vikings guy, Kevin O'Connell. He's good. A few years ago, you had a guy like Stefanski. These are all guys who kind of came out of nowhere, and they're good. Mike McDaniel's another one. D'Amico Ryans. Like, you have good head coaches sprouting out of the ground constantly, which is another reason why it frustrates me that we're clinging so hard to Carroll. Like, this is the 90s. If it was the 90s, I might understand it as like, well, there's no way you're going to get somebody else good, so just stick to this because at least it used to work. But now it's like you throw a rock out the window and it's going to bounce off a future good NFL head coach before it hits the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I agree. I think there's a lot of great candidates out there. I don't believe in this whole like, well, who else if not him, but who else? Well, if not Coach Carroll, then I mean, what else are we going to do? It's like there's some good candidates out there. And if you put a committee together that really beat the path and really tried to look and find out the best, I think you can come up with a really damn good list and a list that would, definitely work. So I'm with you on that. I think there's a lot of good candidates out there.
Yeah. It's the opposite of quarterback. Like, one of the reasons why I defend Geno so much is because I think it would be really hard to find another quarterback better than Geno, because right now quarterback plays down. Like, we're not seeing a lot of really good quarterbacks out there. A lot of the top ones are not even having that good a season. And, even those ones you can't really get. The ones you can get are guys like Ryan Tannehill. So that's why I defend Geno so much. And I don't think you can do better than him right now. But coach, I kind of think the exact opposite, because I see all these young coaches come out of nowhere and just and become really good. And by the way, I see everybody in chat saying it. We know there's an issue with the microphone. We can't fix it right now. So sorry.
What's wrong with my line?
Yeah, there's a lot of static. It pops up every like 15, 20 seconds.
Oh, okay.
I don't know I don't think we can fix it midstream. So we're aware, people.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys, on the deal with that. I'm not sure what could be going on. I'm doing a different setup on my side so we've got some tech issues we're both kind of working through on our deal with this. Guard Knight, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that as well. Another dono says, fellas, I think Jody is absent. Oh, wait, did I just read this one already?
I don't think so.
Fellas, I think Jody is an absentee, but isn't there someone who watches football reporting back to her?
Even if there is, I don't think she really would care that much. I think her interest is making money. And as long as the Seahawks are making money, and I think they are, then I don't think she would make a football decision. Like, I don't think this is even a Jody Allen thing. This isn't me bashing Jody Allen. Like, she didn't ask to own this team. She never wanted to own this team. This goes for a lot of other owners too. They don't make football decisions as much as we, the fans, would like them to. They make a lot of business decisions. I think the Chargers keeping Brandon Staley for this third year when it was obviously not going to work after the second year was a business decision. I think to a certain extent, keeping Pete Carroll this long has been a business decision, not a football decision. A lot of teams out there make a lot of business decisions, not football decisions.
Yeah, she didn't buy the team, to your point. She wasn't invested in that way. She was given the team. She's certainly trying to do right by Paul and probably do is the best to her abilities of it. But if you don't have the necessarily that passion for the sport in that way, where it's just like it was with Paul, where I love the sport and I want to do it, it's a different energy. And yeah, she's got people that could be recommending her to her there, Garth. But it does come down to the end of the day, then you have to choose to fire Carroll or move on from Carroll, and you got to make that call. And sometimes it's easier just to do nothing than to make a really major decision like that, especially for someone maybe missing some of that passion and fire to try to get this team out there to go out there and win, Garth, in that way. So I think she's definitely got a committee of people that Chuck Arnold or whatever that, go back to her and I think advise her and stuff on that. But does she really want to make that move, or is there a part of her that wants to fight it at every turn because of everything that's built into it, from continuing to pay Carroll to going out there and having to find a new coach when you're going to have to tell that coach that this team's likely going to be sold in a couple of years, which means you're likely to be out of a job when that happens. Like you say, there's a lot of extra layers on this that get unpacked, which don't always take you to something as simplistic of, is he the right coach or not? Is he the guy for us to roll into the future or not? Yeah. Thank you, though, Garth, for all your donations. I appreciate you for that. Nolan with another $5 as well. Appreciate you, Dono. Thank you, Nolan. Says, I had a business coach that had revolutionary ideas 15-ish years ago. In the last 3 to 5, those ideas aren't fresh, and the message starts to fall flat. Yeah,
there's a shelf life on this stuff.
It is with everything in life, especially when you're dealing with a sport like football that's got so many complicated items that go into it, and especially when your ideology is driven so much by the simplicity. As the game goes ever complicated and you drive then ever harder back to the simplicity, it just doesn't work. You're going away from where the sport's going. You're in the horse and carriage, while the sport's going over there with Tesla cars. And that's why it shows up sometimes. So I think distinctly the differences in the coaches on the sidelines week in and week out, versus one team really putting their players in the right position, the other team, not. But that's right, concierge, Nolan, you've got to change constantly. And I think the NFL, it moves so fast, and watching it through the years. I'm just looking at the stat. I remember a couple of years ago, looking at that stat on just motion, pre-snap motion. And how you had barely, I think it was like 10% of the pre-snap motion would be going on 10 years ago. And now it's up to like 60% of the snaps have pre-snap motion or something like that. It makes this wide jump. And that's just one little thing. If you think about that affecting across the board on a myriad of other items, you go, yeah, I can see how a sport can quickly leave a coach behind, and they could quickly be going, this just worked 6 years ago. This was fine. This was working perfectly. And now suddenly it just doesn't work at all.
Right.
Thank you, Nolan, for the donations. Appreciate you for that. Upo, thank you for the $10 donation. Says, always enjoy the conversation. Keep up the great work, guys. Well, thank you so very much, Upo. I appreciate the dono. And very, very kind of you. We've had a great time this year, folks, doing these streams and shows. We'll definitely keep them up in the future. We're going to hit this hard this offseason with free agency, draft talk, all that. But thank you, man. We love doing them. We'll keep them up. So appreciate you for that. Garth Knight also with another $10 donation. Thank you, Garth, for all your donos tonight as well. He says, do we have the technology to clone Pete Carroll and expedite the aging like Spock in Star Trek 3? If so, what age would we stop the aging process and keep Carroll cloned?
I mean, once I don't know, maybe even like young Carroll, maybe his philosophies don't work in this NFL. And bottom line is, I want the next coach to be an offensive guy, because it's the offensive guys that are making deep playoff runs every year now.
It is.
Yeah.
I went back and looked at it again here where we're at and updated from records this year and where defensive coaches are versus offensive coaches. And it's just a startling difference. There's so few defensive coaches in the league that are doing it. And there are so few defensive coaches in the league that are head coaches that are doing it, that are actually having success overall as a team right now. It's just not a given pathway to go. And I agree here with Brendan on this one, Garth. You could have a 43-year-old Coach Carroll. I don't think his issue right now is, for instance, necessarily mental aptitude or an inability to process brain from a brain power standpoint. I think that he had so much success with his old philosophies and it got him so far that it's very hard to then deviate away from that and to try something else new when this thing was so good and perfect for you and you had it so right. And I just think that that's maybe the downside of having that kind of ultimate success is that you can't find the second and third album. You got your one album and that's it. And it's so good and perfect, but you need to kind of keep going with it. Like Shanahan, I've been trying to reference this about with him, Brendan, is that Shanahan's offense right now, Brendan, looks nothing like his father Shanahan's offense from 20 years ago. That's just 20 years ago in an offense. Pre-snap motion was not part of Mike Shanahan's offense. The fly sweep was not part of Mike Shanahan's offense. The misdirection in every different direction. What was there was the zone running. What was there was the outside zone. What was there was getting the linemen that could move in space and get to those second level blocks, and the West Coast tenants that were in there before Mike Shanahan kind of brought his in. Because Mike, of course, took the West Coast offense, brought in the zone read, the zone running elements to it, and then brought this whole new flower to bloom. And now his son is taking that and blooming another whole flower. And that's what you got to do. It doesn't matter offense or defense. You have to constantly keep evolving. Can't mean that you can't use some of the things of the prior, but it means you have to constantly be building up onto something new. And if you just remain in the prior, if Kyle Shanahan was just running the Mike Shanahan offense right now, guess what? He'd be failing. He'd no longer be in San Francisco. He certainly never would have gone to a Super Bowl. So that's the part that's missing. That's the part that remains to be seen if this team, Brendan's going to take advantage, or this coach is going to take advantage of that in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you, though, Garth. I appreciate all your donations tonight. Very, 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 very kind of you. And folks, sorry about if there were any mic issues out there. We'll try to get these fixed. I'm going to get my computer back up and running here in the next couple of days. So it's just the way it goes sometimes, live shows, stuff can happen. Appreciate you guys bearing with us on it, though. Garth with another $5. Thank you, Garth. It says, I was joking about cloning Carol, but Star Trek 3 is underrated. I can't remember. I got Star Trek 2. Wasn't 2 Wrath of Khan?
Yeah. 3 was the Search for Spock, where they find out that Spock is still alive and they have to go rescue him.
Isn't
and
that like
for
a boy or something?
some stupid reason, the Federation won't let him won't let Kirk go pick him up, so he has to steal the Enterprise to make it happen. It's okay.
When Kirk goes rogue, that's when he's at his best. So, but no, the Star Trek movies are all right. I'm a Star Trek 2 guy. I like the Wrath of Khan, Ricardo Montalban with the big fake chest. That's all fit. They got the big fake chest on there for back then. He didn't want to lift weights, so he just puts it on there. It still strikes me as so hilarious back then that he's like, this guy, I want the chest to push it up like this. So I've got big chest. But thank you, Garth, for all your donos, man. And and I'll have to go back and check out Star Trek 3, man. I've been trying to go back through some older movies and look for some good underrated hidden gems that are out there, Some of the new movies have been struggling to get me, Brendan. I'm having a hard time.
Have you ever read or seen the documentary about Star Trek 1?
I think I have, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's a memorable catastrophe making that movie. That was Gene Roddenberry, after they tried to, get him out of the production because he was crazy, he kept showing up trying to sabotage it. He would write his own scripts and put the script writer's name on it and give it to everybody and try to pass it off, because he had the idea to make another movie where they find this society that worships a god, and then they get to the god and it turns out to be a machine. And they're all like, well, we're really bored of that story. You do that story all the time in the original series. We don't want to do that. And he didn't appreciate that.
He wanted to go big picture on that first movie. So,
yeah.
Did they bring him back for 2 and 3, or was he just in the?
No, he was, it's kind of like George Lucas with the new Star Wars movies, right? They want to put his name on it, but they don't actually want him to have anything to do with it. 2, 4, and 6 were Nicholas Meyer, who's really, really good. Those were the really good ones.
Well, as long as you get the guy that loves the loves the base story. It doesn't have to be the original guy, just as long as you're bringing in people that actually are fans of the franchise and not just taking on the job to take on the job, right? Well, that's another directing job. No, it's another writing job. You got to have the love for the source material to do it right.
Yeah, 5 was the one where they let Shatner write and direct it, and that one's a disaster.
That's the one with the whales, right?
No, 4 was the one with the whales. That one's good. 5 was the one with Spock's brother,
Oh Lord.
who was basically a televangelist. That's the story they were trying to tell. It's bad.
It ends up falling off the rails. By the time you get to the 6th sequel on most franchises, it's kind of at that point holding on for dear life. They're just cashing checks at that point. There's not a lot of quality going on. It's rare you can find a franchise with like number 6 though. Let me tell you, that was where they finally had it all figured out. You know what
Mission
I mean?
Impossible.
There you go. Maybe that's it. That is a franchise that's like, steadily gotten better. Hell, maybe maybe Mad Max will be. You see the trailer of that new thing? That looked
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. Oh, by the way, since you were saying newer movies haven't really been resonating, last week I saw the new Godzilla. It's really, really good.
I've heard some great reviews on it, so I'm
Yeah.
going to definitely be checking that one out. Thanks. I do need some good recs, so that's when I'll check out. I watched that stupid movie Leave the World Behind on Netflix last night, and I think I just about fell asleep 5 times over. What a
Yeah,
ridiculous film.
I generally do a pretty good job of only seeing movies that I know I'm going to like.
I try to do that too, but then you just get a desperate state. The state where you got your streaming service up. You've gone through 3 different streaming services. You're scrolling, you're clicking. You've already eaten through half your popcorn, and you're like, just pick something for the love of God. You get to that stage of things. You're just like, okay, just pick something. Well, Brandon, thank you for coming in here, man. I know the last couple of weeks haven't been necessarily the funnest of items to have to turn over, as we've got a lot of struggling parts on this team and things to kind of try to figure out, not always the funnest of lights, because we like to talk a lot more about the things that are going right, and a team that's going awesome, and a team that's kicking ass and taking names. Just unfortunately isn't the year where we happen to be doing that. So hopefully this team can get this turned around, Brendan. My big thing with this is you talk about maybe losing out and getting some of the young guys, and that's a good approach. I think, looking to try to make some adjustments that you can maybe build upon, even if they don't work into the, long-term future of things that for next season, especially schematically speaking, commitments to certain ways and that might be a little bit different than the ways that you've run out through the majority of this season. These are the things I'm looking for now as we go forward this year, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. Anything in particular you're looking for as we wind down the last 4 games of the season?
Either win out or lose out, I guess, right? Like, one of the two. Just win out or lose out. Like,
I love it.
If we win out, we're getting in. Like, it's basically mathematically guaranteed. So I'm still, if they do it, I'm gonna be excited for it. I know some people have already kind of bailed. I know they're already, thinking about, oh, we can get the 6th pick in the draft and get a tier 2 player.
Yeah.
Not interested in that. But I'm not there yet.
Yeah, no, I am also with you. If we can have a chance to do it, fight, try to get it. I'd say I never will advocate for tanking. So hopefully the team can go on a run. Maybe we can shock this Eagles team. It certainly looks like they're starting to kind of fall back. You and I will be doing a, of course, preview show on Thursday, looking at how this Eagle team, but they haven't been playing their best ball. So there is still some hope here. We're not until you're out of it, until the fat ladies sing, you're not done. You're still fighting in it. Jordan finishing us off with a nice $2 donation. Thank you for that. He says, reports are Bill is being let go after the season. Indeed, that is what we're hearing. Is Bill Belichick it's been for about the last month and a half. Good. So Jordan, it seems like an open secret that there's even supposedly already a team out there that he's going to be going to, that the Patriots have already set up.
I mean, when they say let go, they mean trade, right? Not fire or something.
I believe that's how it's going to go down. Yeah. Cause
Okay.
he's still under contract. And the part of why I think that what they did in letting this happen out ahead of time, Brendan, why it was leaked so ahead of time. Cause if you think about it, there's always a reason for why you do things, right? So why leak the Bills stuff so far out ahead of time rather than just wait till the end of the season and pull the ripcord if that's what you need to do? Because you're setting up the local fans for it to happen, number one. But then you're also telling the NFL teams out there who might be interested in Bill Belichick's service that the store is open for business. Why don't you make us some offers? And I think that's probably where that went with it. One of those two or both of those two things. But yeah, I think Bill Belichick, the coach, is still probably a very good coach. I think Bill Belichick, the general manager, is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And if you got to get both of those two parts, you're not getting the return on investment with that, especially having to give up a draft pick to get him that you think you will be getting.
Yeah, again, like with all these new young coaches that keep sprouting up everywhere who are good, like Mike McDaniel, like D'Amico Ryans, why would you give up an asset for a 70-something-year-old guy who may or may not even be good anymore and also is going to demand a ton of power that he's clearly proven he can't handle?
Exactly. Also, I was losing my train of thought on that one, but yeah, I don't see there's going to be a team willing to do it because there's probably a lot of teams wanting his services. And so you have to give him that carrot to get him to take it. But I don't know how you can have trust that he's going to run that right. And then that's the right way to go with him. But
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll just have to see. I've long thought Washington seems like the team to me. He stays on the East Coast. It's right down a couple states away. He loves Lombardi. There's kind of a connection with Lombardi. I think did that at the end of his career and went to Washington. So maybe a little bit of a built-in kind of part on that. I don't know. I could be thinking outside the box on that one, but
I like it. I like it.
tell you what, it's an eye-opening stat. I don't know if you saw it, Brendan, but one of the eye-opening stats out there about Bill Belichick and Carroll, which is very interesting to look at, is their records collectively when they don't have Tom Brady and Russell Wilson. And Belichick, it's pretty bad record when he doesn't have Brady, in his time.
Yeah, but
So,
I mean, I look at that and I go, that's less about Brady and more about the fact that when you haven't had him, it's been Mac Jones. It's like, I mean, I'd lose games too if Mac Jones was my quarterback. Like, oh
but
boy.
he picked Mac Jones.
Yeah, I mean,
His
that's Belichick the GM
yeah.
sabotaging Belichick the coach, right?
Very, very much so. Very much so. But I think it also goes back to like his record with the Browns head coach when he had guys like Nick Saban on his coaching roster. It I think goes back to before Tom Brady actually started when he had a guy like Drew Bledsoe out there. And Drew Bledsoe wasn't a bad quarterback, and at that time it wasn't like Drew was over the hill. He was still right, basically in his prime. That's why they got so much back from Buffalo. I think when they moved him to Buffalo in a trade. So he's definitely not lit the world on fire when he's not had Tom. And you're right about Mac, no doubt about it. But we'll see what happens with him, man. That'll be one of the interesting storylines to watch, which team he does go to and how that all kind of breaks down with that.
Yeah, I don't know how Mac is this bad though. Like it looks like a fan won a contest to get to be the quarterback of the team for a day. Like I can't believe how inept he looks. It blows my mind.
We have to do this offseason with the quarterbacks in our look. And this is the thing that I've been educating myself and looking and evaluating these QBs through the last few years so often. And that is that your gut instinct's right in what you're looking at the player. And there are a lot of people that'll tell you different things on stuff that'll try to kind of get you moved off your spot with it. But if you just kind of go into their gut instincts on what you're seeing with the guy on tape and you watch him act on tape and you go, not really mobile, whole lot of playmakers to work with out there at Alabama, not a very big arm. Everything with him is going to be processing and trying to get the ball out of his hands as quick as possible in sort of a spread-based formation. But that's really not enough. I mean, even a guy like Brock Purdy that kind of does that same thing, he does it with mobility. He can get away from people. He can get away from things. You could really add it up quickly as to why Mac Jones was going to not be that good of a quarterback at the next level. And it was much like Wilson in that draft. Two strange evaluations that people really struggle with. I understand Fields being a hard eval. I understand Trey Lance being a hard eval. Even Lawrence to a degree for some people. But those two guys in particular, the Wilson and Mac Jones ones, were just kind of asinine guys to be included up in that top 15, especially the way the NFL ended up viewing other draft classes and other players that came through. Cody Pickett is very much probably a more talented player than Mac Jones, but goes 22, it was weird that one year those two guys got elevated like they did to me. It didn't make any sense.
Kenny Pickett, not Cody. Cody Pickett's very different.
It's the Husky I always go to. It's Kenny Pickett. That's right. I'm always
Cody Pickett did not go in the 20s in the draft.
Over under on the amount of times I call him Cody Pickett on Thursday. Two or three.
Yeah, that's I'm taking the over on that.
You better take the over on that because I'm definitely going to be calling him Cody Pickett on Thursday for sure. Well, folks, do me a favor here on the Hawks Nest. Hit the like button if you could right out the gate. Does help this channel out, helps it grow. Do me a favor as well. Hit the sub button here on this channel and head on over there to Seahawks Brendan Nelson here on YouTube and get subbed up over on his channel too. We do these shows twice a week. We'll be doing them throughout the off season, doing some big time draft coverage, diving deep on into that. And we'll also be back in 2 days here to do another BNB show as we do a preview of this Eagles game, which the season's on the line at this point. Yeah, you're mathematically in it right now, but if you do not go get this win this week, I don't know if you're going to be mathematically in it after that. So, or at very least, the odds will be at that single-digit low level of things, if not fully
I
out
looked into it. If we lose to Philly and win out, our odds are about 50-50.
Oh, okay.
Tommy DeVito did us a big solid last night.
Boy, did he ever? He gave us a good thing. He come up and he give him a win and he give him a loss and give us into the playoffs. So you're welcome, Seattle.
The
Now
Giants
give me
are
a
having
pizza.
more fun. The Giants fans are having a lot more fun than we are right now, and that's pretty depressing.
It is pretty depressing. They are for sure. They're wearing Luigi mustaches, and it's crazy. It's crazy, man. Well, you guys, thank you for much for watching today. Appreciate you for checking us out. We'll be back in a couple of days, and we know your spirits are a little lowly, and so hopefully maybe we can bring you up here with not just this show, but with a final remembrance here. We are still in this. We're still fighting it. It ain't over yet. There's a lot of unfortunate things we got to turn over, but we are still in it. We still have a pathway to get in the playoffs. You get in the playoffs, as they say, anything can happen. I've seen a 9-7 team win a Super Bowl in my lifetime. So yeah, it's crazy to think about. It's crazy. Well, you never know. Have some faith, have some hope, and it might just get rewarded. You never know. Back in 2 days, but until that time, my fellow Seahawks faithful, please do not you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.